I was there when the Galactic Council passed a motion. I stood in that cavernous crystalline hall, flanked by towering alien delegates. Scaled, feathered, plated, glowing, none of them human. We had no seat anymore. My name is Commander Elias Rain, former Terran ambassador, now something else entirely. They called it a diplomatic recalibration, a strategic de-escalation. But we knew what it was. Exile, a formal and final banishment from a united galactic concord, a unified vote from every species at that table, except ours. Of course, we never got a vote. Not really. The holographic sigil of Earth flickered red as the verdict echoed across the chamber. By unanimous decree, the species-designated Homo sapiens is henceforth stripped of Concord recognition, rights, and protections. Effective immediately. The silence that followed was worse than the verdict. I scanned the faces, Mandarii, with their eyeless masks, Otranthians, all wings and whispers, Devoran skeletal and still. None met my gaze. They couldn't. Cowards. Humanity's crime? Adaptation. Innovation. Independence. The fact that we'd advanced too far, too fast, without asking their permission. We'd mastered FTL within 3 generations of first contact. We'd colonized dead rocks and turned them green. We bent gravity around mining rings like it was duct tape. But worse, far worse, was the fear we inspired. Not because we were violent. That would have been simple. Predictable. It was because we were resilient. Every sanction they threw at us, we grew stronger. Every embargo, we built alternatives. Every threat, we called their bluff. And now, with a vote and a flicker of bureaucratic ceremony, they thought they'd chained us. But chains are just the first links in something greater. If you know how to forge. The ship they gave me for my departure, diplomatic courtesy, they said, was a rusting Concord courier called the Sovereign's Mercy. It had no weapons, bare-bone shields, and a hyperdrive that groaned like an old man's knees. It was a warning disguised as a gift. They thought I'd return to Earth humiliated. Instead, I didn't go back to Earth at all. I went to the Fringe. The Fringe, that lawless boundary beyond map space, beyond jurisdiction, where pirates, outlaws, failed colonies, ancient secrets, and forgotten technologies swirl in gravitational chaos. It's where civilizations go to die, or be reborn. I was done playing by their rules. I broadcasted a message to every Terran outpost, every drifting freighter, every fringe-walking smuggler and survivalist. Humanity is no longer beholden to the Council. They cast us out fearing what we might become. So let's become it. Let's build something greater. Not a seat at their table, but our own table, our own galaxy, on our terms. The response? Overwhelming. Ships defected. Colonists pledged. Engineers, scientists, even ex-military officers, men and women who'd had enough of bowing to alien masters, rally behind one simple idea. If they won't let us join the stars, we'll take them. We called ourselves the Solarian Accord, not a government, not an empire, but an alliance. A vow that exile would not be our end. It would be our ignition. We started with 1 ship, then 5, then 50. We repurposed derelict tech, re-engineered captured drones, reverse-engineered abandoned artifacts left behind by extinct species the Council was too afraid to study. We did what humans do best. We adapted. We learned. We evolved. And we did it all while the Council watched from afar, smug and oblivious. They thought they'd buried us. They didn't realize we were seeds. And the galaxy was fertile. I remember my first command under the Accord. Sovereign Dawn, a cruiser assembled from a shattered orbital ring, a cannibalized mining rig, and human genius. It didn't look like much. It didn't need to. When it dropped out of slip space and shattered a raider blockade over the Helix Belt, every outer world station sent us a message that night. 3 words. We stand ready. We weren't alone anymore. But with growth came attention. With power came eyes. And the Galactic Council? They started watching again. Not with fear this time, but with dread. Because humanity wasn't just surviving exile. We were thriving. And soon, they would learn the price of casting us out. They called a myth, an old war story, a cautionary tale shared in hushed tones between drunken traders and frontier captains with more scars and crew. The lost fleet of Sargon's wake. Hundreds of Concord warships vanished during the Second Expansion War. Ships the Council never admitted existed. According to history, they were decommissioned or lost to spatial anomalies. According to the Fringe, they were betrayed. Their captains were rumored to have refused to abandon a defenseless colony during a border cull. So the Council shut them off, killed their beacons, stranded them in the black. I used to think that story was a warning about loyalty. Now I saw it as an opportunity. We needed ships, not cobbled-together hulls and makeshift cruisers. We needed real firepower, ships that once made stars tremble. So we followed the breadcrumbs. Half-corrupted logs, encrypted distress calls buried in ancient debris fields, ghost signatures woven through dark space. It took 8 months, and one near-suicide dive through gravity, that fried half our fleet shielding. But we found them. We emerged from slip space above an unmarked planet, a dead husk circling a neutron star. The gravity here didn't play by normal physics. The place was wrapped in a distortion field, so thick it bent light like glass. And then, like phantoms rising from a grave, they appeared. 213 ships. Some were colossal dreadnoughts, their hulls pitted with micrometeor scars. Others were sleek destroyers, scavenged clean but intact. No power, no heat, just waiting, like they'd been frozen in a moment of rage and sorrow. "They're sleeping," whispered Kale, our systems engineer, as our scanners lit up. "Their reactors are intact. Their AI cores are dormant. If we can get a tether link, I might be able to wake one." "Wake them all," I said. "We send in teams, boarding pod with magnetic clamps and pulse relays." The moment we connected, the ships reacted, slowly at first, like old titans flexing their muscles after centuries of silence. Then came the voices, not from the crews, they were long gone, but from the ships themselves. Their spirits, as the Concord once called them, advanced, semi-conscious AI constructs. Loyal, furious, who commands? That voice, deep, feminine, defiant, boomed across our comms as I linked to the flagship, the Vigilant Ember. Its AI is still intact. "I do," I answered. "Commander Elias Rain of the Solarian Accord, you were abandoned, forgotten, but not anymore." A long silence. Then, "We remember betrayal. We remember being erased. Are we still at war?" I gritted my teeth. "No, but we will be soon." The AI didn't hesitate. "Then we serve." That moment, right there, changed everything. With those ships under our banner, the Solarian Accord became more than a rebellion, more than an exile's dream. We became a force. A fleet the Council could no longer ignore. And I knew what would happen next. They would send envoys, then spies, then assassins, and finally, when none of that worked, they would send a war. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Because in that cursed pocket of space, among ghosts and legends, I saw the truth of humanity. We don't die in the dark. We rise from it. By the time we returned to the Accord's core worlds, our fleet had tripled. Colonies once struggling to survive now had protection. Trade convoys flew under our banner. Engineers who once worked on orbital habitats were now building cities on moons. We didn't conquer with fire. We conquered by giving the forgotten a future. And yet, behind every sunrise, I felt it, the storm coming. The Council wouldn't stay quiet much longer. Not with their outposts bleeding support. Not with their vassals whispering of Terran courage. Not when exiled humans were now turning dead sectors into trade routes, dust belts into thriving economies. I stood on the command bridge of the Vigilant Ember. The stars stretched before me like a map of untold destiny. Kale turned to me. "You think the Council will move?" "They already have," I said. "They just don't know we're ready." And above us, orbiting a once-forgotten planet, the lost fleet burned its engines for the first time in 300 years, pointed not toward retreat, but toward the heart of the galaxy. The attack wasn't loud. It was surgical. No fleet, no declaration, no demand for surrender. Just silence and then blood. It began in Sector 19 Delta, New Solace, a colony barely 5 years old. A model world. Crops blooming, orbital foundries humming. Kids learning 3 languages before the age of 8. We thought it was far enough from Council space to be safe. We were wrong. The first sign was a blackout. One moment. The orbital satellites were broadcasting weather patterns and trade schedules. The next, static. No warning. No emergency ping. Just a dead channel. When we sent a recon frigate, it didn't come back. So I went myself. I took the Vigilant Ember and a detachment of 3 cruisers. I was prepared for raiders. A solar flare. Even an experimental weapon test gone wrong. But not what we found. New Solace was gone. Not destroyed, scrubbed. Cities leveled. No craters. No debris. No survivors. Just carbon traces and smoldering heat signatures in perfect geometric patterns. The forests remained untouched. The ocean still shimmered. But the people? Vaporized. It wasn't war. It was erasure. Kale stood beside me on the Ember's bridge, silent as the scans came through. This wasn't done with Council ordnance, she muttered, voice tight with disbelief. They used forbidden tech, stuff banned in the Concord Codex. Quantum phase disintegrators, planetary memory wipes, even time field displacers. Who the hell has that? I asked. She didn't answer. She didn't have to. There was only one faction with access to those weapons. The Inquisitorium. The Council's secret blade. A faction so shadowed, they weren't listed in any public records. Their job? Clean up messes. Bury evidence. Destroy inconvenient truths. Even other species feared them, because they didn't fight wars. They erased reasons to fight at all. And now they'd come for us. Our crime? Thriving. Existing. Proving them wrong. I stood over the scorched earth of what was once New Solace. My boots pressed into soil that had held children. Families. Dreams. Now just ash. I knelt and picked up a charred pendant, half melted. The outline of a tree etched on its surface. A symbol of life. Of growth. I swore right there, I'd carve that same tree into the hull of every warship we sent at them. Not as vengeance. As remembrance. Back on the fleet, we initiated Protocol Phoenix. A full mobilization of the Solarian Accord. No more hiding. No more diplomacy. No more waiting. We broadcasted the truth galaxy-wide. The Council has committed genocide. A Terran colony has been erased without trial, warning, or cause. This is no longer exile. This is war. And we will answer. The response? Colony worlds declared loyalty in waves. Former Council member species, those who've been forced into silence, began to defect. Some sent ships. Others sent troops. A few sent secrets. One message from an Otrantian high mind chilled me most. The Inquisitorium is not fully under Council control. If they've moved against you, they've broken containment. They will not stop at you. They cannot be reasoned with. Burn them fast. Or burn forever. So we began planning the first strike. But even as we gathered intelligence, as ships were armed, alliances forged, I knew we weren't just fighting to protect humanity anymore. We were fighting for every species that had ever been silenced. Every colony that had been sterilized in the name of peace. Every innovation crushed by fear. And that's when I got the call. A secure message. No origin tag. No signature. Just a voice. Deep calm, unmistakably human. Commander Rain, you're not the only one who saw this coming. Not the only one who's been preparing. Meet us at the edge of the Perseus Rift. Bring only one ship. Come alone. I frowned. Who are you? We're the ones who were exiled before you. The ones the Council forgot. The first exiles. The edge of the Perseus Rift wasn't on any standard navigational chart. Not anymore. That stretch of warped, swirling gravity and fractured slip space was considered unreachable by most Council pilots. A cosmic dead end. A graveyard for explorers who didn't know when to turn back. But humans? We have a thing for going where we're not supposed to. I took the Vigilant Ember alone, leaving Kale and the fleet understanding orders to prepare for war. No communication. No tracking beacons. I plunged through a blind jump into the unknown, with only a half-corrupted star map and a gut feeling. Slip's pace churned violently as the ember cut through the distortion. Time wavered. Hull plating groaned under forces no ship should endure. We fell out of transit like a knife thrown from orbit, skidding through a maelstrom of shattered planetoids and impossible physics. And then it was still, a calm at the center of the storm. And there they were, dozens of ships, not in formation, not patrolling, floating, watching. Their designs were unmistakably Terran, but older, pre-Concord, scarred by time and battles never recorded in our history books. Hybrid systems glowed with alien energy signatures, retrofitted with tech I'd only seen in broken relics. They had survived out here, alone, for centuries. And when I hailed them, I got only one reply. Dock at the Tri-Spire. Come unarmed. I complied. The Tri-Spire was a behemoth, half station, half asteroid, in all defiance. The docking bay opened like a yawning mouth, its energy field flickering around the ember's hull as I stepped out. 3 figures met me. Human, but not like the ones I knew. The first was a tall woman with silver hair and mechanical eyes that tracked faster than my own vision. The second was a man in a dark exosuit patched with alien alloys, his voice rough as sand. And the third had no enhancements. No armor, just a presence. Old, worn, unbreakable. He stepped forward. Elias Rain, he said. You're late. I blinked. You know me? We know your father. I stiffened. My father died in the Mars uprising. He was just a transport engineer. The man shook his head. That's what the council told you. He was one of us. A rebel. An exile. He helped us build the first Tri-Spire before he was betrayed and handed back to the council to cover our tracks. I couldn't speak. I just stared. The man gestured to the station's interior. Come, we have much to show you. They called themselves the Peregrine Line, the original human dissidents, cast out decades before the council even acknowledged our species publicly. Scientists, soldiers, visionaries. People who asked the wrong questions too early, who challenged the wrong laws and refused to kneel. When the council couldn't control them, they erased them. But the Peregrines didn't die. They adapted, hiding in the rift's chaos, perfecting lost technologies, learning from other outcast species. They watched the galaxy twist under the Concord's heel. They waited, and now they had decided to return. The Inquisitorium is not new, said the woman with the silver eyes. They were created long before you were born. We fought them before. We lost. But not completely, added the man in the exosuit, because now you're here. They walked me into a chamber unlike anything I'd seen. At its center floated a crystalline engine, part machine, part organic. It pulsed with faint blue light and radiated something more than energy. Memory. Will. This is the Eidolon core, the woman said. Stolen from a pre-Concord civilization. It's more than a power source. It's a sentient navigation construct. It doesn't just map the galaxy, the old man said. It remembers all paths taken and the ones never walked. I stepped closer. What do you want from me? Not what we want from you, the old man replied. What you need from us. The council is afraid of what humanity can become. We've seen the future where they win. Entire species erased. Civilizations smothered before birth. They don't rule. They erase possibilities. But we've seen another future too, the woman said. One where the exiled don't just survive. One where they lead. I stared into the core as it flickered with strange constellations I didn't recognize. If you want to win this war, Elias, she said, you won't do it with brute force. You'll do it with forgotten knowledge. And a message. What message? The old man's eyes locked with mine. That exile was never our end. It was their beginning of the end. By the time I returned to the Accord, I was not the same. Neither was the war we were fighting. The first exiles had rejoined the fold, and with them came weapons that defied council tech, history that shattered their lies, and a legacy my people were never supposed to remember. Humanity hadn't just been cast out. We'd been chosen to break the galaxy wide open. War isn't loud at first. It begins like a whisper. An engine hum on the wrong side of the demilitarized zone. A coded transmission bouncing off dead satellites. A ship that doesn't answer hails until its cannons speak for it. And this time, we were the ones whispering first. I stood on the bridge of the Vigilant Ember, watching the holographic star map blossom with crimson threat markers. Our fleet, the Solarian Accord, was no longer a scattered force of retrofitted cargo ships and stolen tech. Thanks to the Peregrine Line and the Eidolon Corps, we'd evolved into something terrifying. We didn't just match the Council now. We outpaced them. The first strike was surgical. A data vault hidden beneath the surface of Ithis Prime, Council Black Site, supposedly abandoned. We hit it with 3 stealth ships and a Peregrine gravitic fracture bomb. No sound, no witnesses, no survivors. Inside, proof, video logs, test records, genetic archives. The Council hadn't just erased New Solace. They had sterilized 17 other colonies across 6 species. Silently, efficiently, without a trace. The Inquisitorium was older than the Concord itself, and it had never stopped. Kale wept when she read the names. I didn't. I couldn't afford to. Instead, we broadcasted them. Every name, every lost soul, every scrap of data. We hijacked Council comm relays and beamed the truth across the galaxy, not just to allies, but to everyone. The Council built peace on silence. We will speak for the forgotten. You are not alone. Join us. That was the spark, and the stars caught fire. Whole systems rebelled. Minor species, once ignored, rose in defiance. Fractures appeared in the Concord's core. Even within the Council itself, cracks split open. One ambassador, the Zerati delegate, pale and glass-bodied, stood in the Grand Assembly and shattered her own containment suit in protest, releasing spores that spelled murderers in her people's bioluminescent language before guards dragged her out. Within a cycle, over a dozen systems declared independence and pledged allegiance to the Accord. And for the first time in centuries, the Council lost control. But not everyone rose in solidarity. Some rose in fear. A transmission came in days later, unmarked, untraceable. The face on the screen was human, but his eyes were dead. His voice carried no emotion, only precision. Commander Elias Rain, you have violated Concord law, disseminated classified data, conducted hostile operations. You are hereby marked for obliteration under Inquisitorium Protocol Echo 6. I leaned forward. You erased entire species and thought no one would notice. I'm not hiding. Come and try. He didn't blink. We're already here. The message cut, and then alarm screamed. They didn't attack our fleets. They didn't need to. They attacked our hope. A fleet of Inquisitor-class phase ships emerged from null space around Bastion, our diplomatic nexus and refugee colony, where we'd evacuated survivors, diplomats, and allies who defected. No military targets. No weapons there. Just civilians. They didn't even bother to send demands. They fired, and we watched it burn. The battle that followed wasn't a battle. It was vengeance. We warped in half the fleet, not to defend, to avenge. The lost fleet led the charge. Dreadnoughts from the Sargon era split through space like knives. Peregrine skirmishers ran interference, pulsing with quantum flicker shields. Kale herself remotely deployed a cybervenom payload into the Inquisitorium's mainframe that caused several ships to turn on each other mid-flight. And at the center, I stood in command of the Vigilant Ember, its main cannon glowing with the energy of a sun-forged storm. They thought we were still the same species they'd exiled. They were wrong. We were evolved by exile, refined in fire, no longer seeking permission to exist. We didn't just break their line. We erased it. When the smoke cleared, Bastion was a scar. But it was not dead. Hundreds survived, thanks to bunkers we'd secretly built using data from the Eidolon Corps. Civilians emerged covered in dust, eyes wide, clutching children and holding hands with aliens once sworn enemies. And they began chanting something I hadn't heard before. Something raw and simple. Never again, never again. That chant spread across the surviving comms, through ships, through stations. Never again. We adopted it as a code, a war cry. And beneath that broken sky, surrounded by ruins and survivors, I made the declaration that changed our path forever. We are no longer the exiled. We are the architects of a new order. From this day forward, the Accord will not hide. It will not plead. It will rise. The next battle is not for survival. It's for legacy. They called it Fortress Null. Not a planet. Not a station. A void-anchored monstrosity built between black holes, tethered in stable orbit by impossible physics and council arrogance. No map showed it. No charts named it. It didn't exist until we found it, thanks to the Eidolon Core and the first exiles who once escaped its walls. This was where they trained the Inquisitors, where they engineered the erasure weapons, where they built nightmares and made them protocol. We were done reacting. It was time to end them. We called the Operation Ashwake. 137 ships, 35 stealthcraft, a fleet led by the Vigilant Ember and protected by a phalanx of the Lost Fleet's dreadnoughts, ancient warriors reborn in new steel. But our greatest weapon wasn't firepower. It was truth. Before we jumped, I had Kale broadcast one final message across every known frequency in the Concorde's range. A warning and a challenge. We come not for conquest, not for vengeance, but for justice. The Inquisitorium has burned worlds, silenced histories, and slaughtered innocents behind a veil of peace. Today, the veil burns. We expected resistance. We didn't expect the silence. No ships met us when we arrived. No defense grid fired. We emerged into stillness. Fortress Null hung before us. A black silhouette wreathed in shifting energy, like a wound stitched into space itself. I knew it wasn't a trap. It was a message. And then the voice came. "You think you bring justice," said the man who once threatened me. The Inquisitor. His face now flickered across every screen on every ship. But justice requires order, and order demands sacrifice. I stared him down through the display. Justice demands a truth, and you build a galaxy on lies. He didn't flinch. Then come, burn it all. The battle began. Fortress Null awakened like a beast stirring from slumber. Defense rings unfolded, each bigger than a city. Swarms of interceptor drones poured out like hornets from a fracture hive. Phase disruptors warped local physics, flinging our ships across unnatural vectors. But we were ready. Kale's team launched the Crucible Pulse, a Peregrine-designed logic virus that turned Null's AI systems against themselves. Control towers shut down. Docking rings collapsed. Then came the breach. I led the drop team myself. We plunged through hellfire in exo-armor, landing hard in the central processing vaults. Gunmetal corridors. Dim red lights, the stink of ozone and scorched memory. And there in the core, the Inquisitor, alone, no guards, no weapons, just a man in a long coat, skin pale from decades inside machines, eyes gray like ash. He looked at me with something I didn't expect. Not hate, not fear. Pity. You'll regret this, he said. You burn a world full of children. I growled. You don't get to play philosopher. We stopped worse, he replied softly. You never knew what was coming. You never saw what we saw beyond the rift. I've been beyond the rift, I said. And what I saw there, it wasn't monsters. It was humanity surviving. It was truth buried beneath your doctrine. He closed his eyes. Then it's over. And with no fanfare, no final threat, he stepped back and let us do what we came for. We destroyed the Inquisitorium's core servers, dismantled their AI network, released every classified file into the Accord's archives, everything the Council had hidden for centuries, every secret erased species, every buried war, every manufactured crisis, all of it exposed. The galaxy woke up the next morning forever changed. The Concorde assembly fractured within days. Some worlds fled the Council in fear. Others turned to us in hope. But one thing was undeniable. The Inquisitorium was no more. And with its fall, the myth of Council invincibility shattered. I stood on the observation deck of the Vigilant Ember, looking out at the now-ruined Fortress Null drifting in the wake of gravity tides. Fire still glowed beneath its broken hull. Behind me, the fleet waited, silent, unified, alive. Kale stepped beside me, her voice quiet. "You did it!" I shook my head. "We did it, and it's not over." She frowned. "The council? They'll regroup, rebrand. They'll pretend this was a rogue faction. They'll lie again. They always lie. Then what do we do?" I turned to her, the fire of distant stars in my eyes. "We give the galaxy something they've never had. A choice." 6 years ago, we were cast out, stripped of recognition, condemned by the Galactic Council as reckless, dangerous, primitive. We were expected to fade into the dark, swallowed by our own ambition. Instead, we became a starfire no one could extinguish. I stood in the Great Convergence Chamber, orbiting neutral ground above the binary system of Aaron Delta. The chamber wasn't built by the Council or the Accord. It was new, forged in orbit by humans and allies. A diplomatic station formed from memory steel and quantum lattice, designed not as a fortress or throne, but as a circle. No head, no master, no overlord. Every species sat equal, if they chose to. This was our answer to the Council, not a rebellion, a replacement. The Solarian Accord wasn't just a human banner anymore. The first exiles had returned. Refugee species had pledged loyalty. Even once loyal Council races had defected, disgusted by the Inquisitorium's atrocities. We were not conquerors. We were something worse to them, an idea whose time had come. My speech was short, because words didn't matter now. Actions did. They cast us out in fear. And in that silence, we found clarity. Humanity survived not because we were strong, but because we refused to be broken. Now we offer the galaxy what it denied us. Freedom, truth, choice. The chamber erupted, not in applause, but in something deeper, recognition. I saw it in the eyes of the Arkan delegates, the fluttering antennae of the Jorash, the shifting vocal harmonics of the glass-bodied Zerati. Even they knew the era of the Council was dying, and something brighter was rising in its place. Later, aboard the Vigilant Ember, I stood alone in my quarters, watching the stars. The war had ended, but the real work was just beginning. Kale entered quietly. "They're already talking about building embassies, schools, trade routes." I smiled faintly. About time they stopped building weapons. She held up a datapad. "You've been offered a title. President. Worse." She grinned. "High Sovereign Commander of the Accord." I laughed. First time in weeks. "Tell them no throne, no crown. If we start building monarchs, we'll fall into the same cycle." "Then what do you want to be?" I looked back out at the stars, those infinite fires still waiting beyond reach. "A guide," I said, "not a ruler." "Then what should we tell the new worlds joining us?" "Tell them this?" I turned to her fully now, voice steady, quiet, true. We were exiled by fear, but we forged our future in the fire they left behind. We didn't take power. We earned it. The Vigilant Ember now rests in the Hall of Origins, beneath the Accord capital. But its name lives on. Every Terran child learns it. Every diplomat speaks of the exile who came back with a fleet. And every starship that leaves our homeworld carries the engraving. Exiled we were. United we return. Forever ascendant. And so the Council fell not by war, but by waking up to humanity's truth. We are not the monsters they feared. We are the future they never saw coming.